Alyssa, do you feel safe and secure in the city of Minneapolis, in Minnesota?
I absolutely don't. And this is something that's been going on since last July. The Leadership Institute's Campus Reform actually reported on this when the University of Minnesota cut ties with the Minneapolis Police Department. Since then, we have seen an immense spike in crime on and near campus. I mean, just last month, we saw 13 incidents of aggravated assaults, 52 burglaries, 22 car thefts, 4 sexual assaults, and a murder. Now, tell me how calling to interfere with the police is going to make our community more safe. I'll answer that for you. It's not, and as a student, it makes me incredibly worried.
Walk our viewers through this. What's happening? Is your phone blowing up with alerts from the school, and what are they saying?
Absolutely, and it's been quite alarming to see the texts coming in right now. As you said, the University of Minnesota has seen a violent increase in those crimes on campus. We have seen 8 reported violent crimes in the past month following cutting ties with the Minneapolis Police Department. For comparison, we've only seen 6 crimes in the past 6 months. As a student, this is incredibly alarming. And what's more alarming is that the University of Minnesota has not said or done anything in response to what's happening at the university.
For mental health, the study that you mentioned has contributors that come from the Center of Epidemiology and Public Health, an institute that has been in the public spotlight lately as universities look to them to open amid the COVID crisis.
The university is aware of the situation that's going on. I've wrote about it at Leadership Institute's Campus Reform and will continue to update them on the situation at Leadership Institute's Campus Reform. But the university, again, has done absolutely nothing in response to this situation. To me, as a student, this, again, is very worrisome that the University of Minnesota is more concerned with protecting this image of social justice than going out and actually protecting students.
Except, Alyssa, that's exactly what she wanted to encourage people to do.
You are exactly right, and the proof is in the video. She calls to use up their resources, to make them show up to something, and it's particularly reckless for the University of Minnesota to not really take action against it. I think when you see students, especially students in leadership, who are calling for this sort of careless action, the university needs to do something besides just make a statement, you know, especially coming from a student like myself who doesn't want to be represented by someone who makes such reckless calls.
Learning, these people don't want to go back, and in fact they did something really stupid to prove how much they don't want to go back. What did they do?
They hosted a die-in at Penn State. Basically a bunch of grad students had gotten into this field and laid down and pretended to die in order to protest Penn State offering some in-person classes this upcoming fall.
Tell me about who sends these alerts. Is it done through the school? Is it done through a public safety office? How does that work?
It's done directly through the University of Minnesota. So as students, depending on the severity of crime, will get an email and a text as well, right to our phones as soon as the crime is reported.
So make false calls to the cops. Is this a sentiment shared by the majority of students at the University of Minnesota? And what do you think about it?
Like you said, it's a particularly reckless statement. Thankfully, this is a vocal minority of students who are calling for it. Yet it's particularly concerning that you see people like student leadership make calls for what sounds like is illegal emergency phone calls to the police. And there's a reason that it's illegal, Pete, and that's because it makes communities less safe.
Alyssa, why do you think the numbers are up as far as young voters going to the polls already?
I think that many young voters have seen a lot of recent events. I'll point to the George Floyd protests, for example, that hit especially close to home at the University of Minnesota up in Minneapolis, and seeing the destruction of their communities and the lack of care for their safety. I think it's important to ask ourselves, you know, which party really cares about our communities, our safety, and our future? And to me, it's the Republican Party.
This absolutely is a sign. I mean, when you remove police from high crime areas, crime does go up, and we've continued to see this trend at the University of Minnesota. To me, this was a knee-jerk reaction by the university in response to a letter that some students had written. And as a consequence, they publicly invited criminals into students' neighborhoods. I'm not the only one who's nervous about this situation. I interviewed several students who say that they are genuinely concerned about returning to campus amid this violent uptick in crime.